Hey, and welcome to the first episode of the Kingmaking interviews. Kingmaking.xyz is your one-stop destination for all things crypto marketing. And for the first episode, I got a great guest. His name is Andrey. He has been a editor at Cointelegraph, among other sort of relevant roles in that space. And I just wanted to ask him, how should Web3 projects approach media or press to score some media for their project? So we talked about a lot of things: who to approach, how to approach them, how to pitch them, how to follow up. And I got some what I think was good news as far as how often writers actually pick up a story that was sent to them through a sort of cold pitch. And we talk about how to approach this entire thing. So I learned a lot. I hope you will enjoy it. And without further ado, here's the first episode of the Kingmaking interviews with Andrey. Please enjoy. Alrighty, we're live. So Andrey, it's good to have you, man. This is actually the first episode of the Kingmaking interview show, whatever you want to call it. But appreciate you taking the time, man. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. Excited to be your first guinea pig, I guess.
Yeah. And you've just told me that you're busy with your startup and everything, which we'll talk about as well. But I'm really excited to talk to you. Obviously, I've been bugging you for the last couple of months a little bit here and there, but you have a very interesting background as it relates to press. I believe you were sort of an editor at Coindesk.
It was actually Cointelegraph. Yeah.
Cointelegraph. All right.
I mean, yeah, essentially in, I think 2019, I joined first Crypto Briefing, which is still, a pretty decent publication. First it was marketing, but then eventually I transitioned to become a journalist. And a few months later, I joined Cointelegraph, and it was kind of during their, I guess, renaissance. Like they were really investing a lot in quality. And so I was kind of part of that cohort, but there were also other great journalists working together with me. And yeah, I stayed there for a couple of years. It was during the 2020, 2021 bull, so a lot of work, a lot of attention. So things were going pretty nicely, and eventually I became an editor there. So I focused on technology. So just like crypto, like DeFi, L1s, following, for example, the Ethereum roadmap, stuff like that. And yeah, then later I decided that it's just not really for me. And I wanted to do something of my own. And yeah, I quit journalism, went a little bit into PR, just to kind of, work on the other side, the dark side, you could say. And yeah, I mean, obviously as a journalist, this helped me a lot as a former journalist. It helped me a lot in understanding how to pitch the press releases, because obviously I was on the receiving end of them.
Right.
And yeah, I mean, that's kind of it for the background.
No, that's great. And I was just going to ask you that, which, I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I find whatever situation you're in, if you've ever been on the other side of the table, that's when you really kind of learn about what is important here. And so I think when it comes to PR and, getting featured in press and stuff like that, which I know that's very valuable. And for a lot of crypto projects, it's sort of a dream to be featured in whatever, Coindesk, Cointelegraph, you name it. But they haven't sat on, at the other end of the table. And so in order to, I love this quote by Charlie Munger. He says, "Show me the incentive, I'll show you the outcome." And I fully agree with that. So can you help us understand, like, what are the incentives for the people at the other side of the table? Because as I kind of tried to make my best guess around that, I think I came up quite short, because my logic was sort of like, they're looking for news, they'll write about anything, et cetera, et cetera. And so I'm almost like doing them a favor by pitching them. But I think that's completely not true. So I would love to hear from you, like, what are writers and editors and journalists, like, what are they looking for? What's valuable to them?
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously a good question. So what you said actually is kind of correct. Like, there is definitely an element of, they're desperate for stories. They want to publish something. But the thing about it is that there's kind of an irony here, because there's a lot of projects that want to get PR, and they're kind of projects on the, let's say, lower end, like they're not particularly popular. And journalists, they really want to get news from the really popular projects, and they chase after them the same way as a project chases a journalist.
Right.
I guess to answer the question about incentives, there is no like there isn't really a monetary incentive involved. So usually you're kind of expected to produce a few articles per day and
Okay.
maybe search for your own stories. It also depends on the journalists. There are some that are kind of more doing the grunt work, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
and others who are more involved in like doing deep studies, interviews, etc. And for them, it's fine if they produce fewer articles per day or per week, as long as they're higher quality.
Right.
So yeah, in terms of incentives, first of all, of course, filling the quota. So just publishing a few stories per day. But obviously,
Okay.
they have to be interesting stories. So it's
Right.
from updates from popular projects, stuff that happened, regulatory updates, whatever. Each journalist has their own beat. So they maybe mostly write about regulatory stuff, about tech. So you kind of need to search for the right fit in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so again, filling the quota, making it interesting, like the story. It has to be something,
Right.
just like you can also imagine yourself, like, would I read about this as a person
Right.
who is not involved at all with your project or stuff? Like, would I
Yeah.
care about this at all? And that's what journalists really think also. And yeah, finally, the incentive, I guess, is just, again, nothing monetary usually. There may be, in some cases, stuff involved with, let's say, the editorial, like the kind of higher management that, passes down, let's say, um, projects that they should really write about. But
Right.
this
Right.
could
Right.
be, so this is kind of rare, but again, usually it's not so flagrant. Like you're not going to write about, I don't know, like Safe Moon or something just because in a serious publication, at least, just because the
Mm-hmm.
CEO got a bribe or something. But in any case, it's not just about the money. It's a lot of it is also about the connections, the helping out friends. So it's like that's kind of the deeper side of the incentives. But that's I guess as shady kind of as it goes in the industry.
Yeah. 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 And I know that I know that Forbes, for example, I know that there's a lot of sort of fuckery going on, like even not just
Yeah.
on a higher level, but like a lot of, long tail, let's say writers and stuff, because I think you can actually pay to become sort of a Forbes writer in one of their whatever programs. And then
Mm-hmm.
people will pay like $5,000 to get featured in and stuff like that. I don't know what that side of things look like in crypto. I would imagine it's actually less established because it's a much younger industry,
Mm-hmm.
let's say. But what I wanted
It
to
happens.
ask
It
is
happens.
yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. What I wanted to ask as a follow up there was that makes sense, right? So there is a little bit of truth to maybe my hypothesis, right? People do have a quota, so there is a quantity element to their job,
Yeah.
and then of course there's the quality element which you touched on, where it's like, would I read about this? Is this interesting? So how do you think people should approach that? Like, let's say I have my Web3 project and I would love to be featured in CoinDesk, and maybe I build up a list of people to contact.
Yeah.
How should I approach that as far as like, how do I know if this is interesting or not? How should I tweak the pitch to make it interesting? Should I wait maybe because the timing is incorrectly? Like, so how do you think about the interesting side? How should I approach that thinking?
Yeah, absolutely. That's actually kind of a mistake I see a lot for Web3 projects is that they kind of think that journalists care about the same things as VCs. So, VCs will care about growth, metrics,
Right.
this guy, like these guys backing these. There's an element of that in journalism as well, but it's not as strong.
Right.
So in any case, the point is that you definitely won't interest them just by the business figures alone. They may write about something like a truly extraordinary milestone, like something, I don't know, you've reached 10 billion TVL in this market. Like that's definitely
Right.
worthwhile to talk about. But
Right.
they're not going to, write about, oh, this project reached 150% growth, but it's still like a 200K TVL. I mean, it just isn't really
Whatever. Yeah.
newsworthy. So, removing the kind of mistaken part, what you should do, so it's kind of a complex topic, of course. So each journalist is different. So I think I am like a tangible advice I could give is just to find the person that you are going to pitch to, like find what he writes about, or even better, like just search for articles that write about your specific niche, let's say. So for example, we are building on Moonbeam. So I'm going to mostly focus on journalists that write about Polkadot, Moonbeam, and DeFi,
Right.
these things. So especially the Polkadot aspect, because it's kind of a niche network in a sense.
Yeah.
So first of all, you target the right person that would generally find interesting, like your ecosystem, what's happening in your ecosystem. And second of all, you highlight what is unique about your project for the most part. So again, like this unfortunately excludes most forks, so sorry for that. But essentially, like if you're just, for example, fork the project and you are trying to get press, it's just not going to happen
Hard.
because there's nothing interesting about what you're doing except for
Right.
like, for example, I know of a project that is a fork and they got some press, but just because they had like some really big VCs in the round, and
Right.
yeah, like that, but nothing beyond that. I mean, just like it's not interesting to actually write about your merits as a platform. So focus on what you do different. Focus on how you're unique, what kind of problems you're solving for the users, because they do care a lot about the users, not so much about like token holders and stuff.
Right.
So they just, I would say it's that.
Okay. That's very useful. And my next question is really about I I think that there's like there's two scenarios, right? One is where most people are, where they don't have any connections whatsoever in the industry, and the other case is where like maybe you have some sort of connection or something along those lines, where maybe somebody is an editor or a writer or like a friend of a friend. How do you approach those two differently? Like if you were just going in cold, you don't know anybody. How do you
Yeah.
approach that? Do you just build up a list of people, you send them a cold email, and then if you know somebody, do you like how do you play your cards?
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, thankfully, this is one of those things that you kind of need to learn as a journalist as well. Like cold contacting people, So
Yeah.
the most effective way of doing that, I mean, personally, I tend to ignore emails a lot because everybody uses emails. The inbox is going to be always spammed. Like,
Yeah.
for example, in Cointelegraph, like some other publications are a little bit more, let's say, diligent about it. But in Cointelegraph, the main kind of editor, the main email for PRs was very rarely checked, actually, just because there was
Right.
so much stuff going into it that there's no way
Right.
to filter it.
Interesting.
So if you want to cold contact somebody, so one useful tip is every author has an author page where you have some of the contacts. So you have, for
Yep.
example, his personal email, which is already much better chances. Second, you have like LinkedIn, Twitter sometimes. And so in general, I would say that the best way to approach this is either with Twitter. So you just send a DM, or you maybe like, if the DMs aren't active, you can maybe like try to hit a follow, see if you get a follow back, then they'll be active. If not, I mean, you could use the like post, like the tweet, the one with the tag at the initial that doesn't appear like you just send a tweet, hey, like I want to pitch your project, and maybe he sees that and he's interested. Um, Another good way is through Telegram. So there's actually, you can search for like maybe some big groups where, so for example, in DeFi, there's this chat called like Lobster DAO where basically everybody is in. Maybe they're not like super active, but they'll be there. And
Yep.
maybe like if you're writing about DeFi, the journalist you're looking for is also going to be in that chat. You can find him through the contact list and just send a DM on Telegram. Make it like the most important thing is not to say like hello and then that's it, because you're not even gonna get an answer. Just say hello, I'm this and this. We're doing this project. Can I send you this pitch for something that we're doing? And so that's, I think, a good way of getting a response at least. So
Yep.
that's it's like kind of something I like to say about my work as a PR, let's say, agent, is that I can guarantee that your pitch will be seen. I can't like force them to accept it, but
Right.
already getting it seen is like a big step.
Okay.
As for context, like it's the same thing. Just you have a Telegram, you have Twitter, you send them a pitch. Hey, there's this news. Are you interested? sometimes it's yes, sometimes it's not. That's the way of the world.
Okay, that makes sense. And so the pitch, I was going to follow up on that, but you already touched
Yeah.
on it. So it's basically very short, kind of like to pique their curiosity. Is this something you want to know more about or potentially write about? And then it's up to them basically to go from there.
Yeah, I mean, you should definitely like highlight what's interesting about your news story here, like just one or
Right.
two kind of, let's say, bullet points sized arguments. So that's just, yeah, again, to pick their interest, and then you send the PR, and that's going to have most of the details.
What about like the exclusivity? Is there value to sort of providing exclusivity to one platform, or is there value in saying like, hey, we're sending this to everybody? Like, what's the take on that?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, exclusivity can definitely help you push, get that extra push. Let's say if you're
A
like
little
kind of
urgency.
no, it's more like if you're right on the edge of being kind of interesting, but not like super, like you have to kind of do some convincing, let's say.
Right.
So, like essentially, if you're, let's say, Solana with a major project update, it's not smart for you to do an exclusive because it's going to get picked up by
Right.
everybody anyway. So,
Anyway, yeah.
if you're somewhat smaller, like maybe some kind of hot VC startup that just raised, like stuff like that, then it can definitely help you out, especially if you have some like close connections with one publication, and you can just tell them, guys, let's do an exclusive, and they're going to be more, let's say, interested in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the times they will actually like kind of offer you that. They will ask for the exclusive,
Right.
and you don't have to give it. So like usually if they ask for the exclusive, I mean, they're probably going to write about you anyway. You can just
Okay.
do some negotiating, let's say, but it's like kind of
Right.
worth a shot for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, in general, just if you're getting some responses, I think it might be a good idea to just say, we might be able to do an exclusive with you guys. Maybe just go for like the big one, like Coindesk. Try to give them an exclusive. If they accept,
Mm-hmm.
good. If not, I mean, the most important thing is that you shouldn't pitch at the same time to everybody, and then like somebody just randomly gets the exclusive, and you have to say to the others, "Oh, sorry, like this is not available anymore." It's
Okay.
gonna get you on their shit list, and they're just not gonna like you anymore.
Right. That makes sense. So okay, so that makes sense then. There is potentially some value for you there in the sense that it might push them over the edge potentially.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it can be a little tool.
Can be, but again, I guess it's like a negotiating thing. Like if they're like, yeah, I mean, it's nice, but we're busy. You can try to offer it and see what happens.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. What about timing? I would imagine, topics come and go all the time in the sort of news cycle. And I would imagine that if you're, they did this very interesting study. There's a favorite TED Talk of mine where this guy who runs this company called Idea Lab, they funded and started like hundreds of companies. And he kind of like went and analyzed all of them. And he found that timing was like the biggest factor of success to the company. It wasn't the idea or the team or the funding. It was like, when was the timing of the market? And I've started multiple businesses in the past. And I know that when I hit the timing right, it was like literally 10 times easier to sell something than when the timing was off, let's say. So how does that play into this? And like, what do you do with that? Like, let's say you've already missed you've missed a boat on some sort of topic. Should you not even bother? If you know that something is coming up, should you sort of prepare for that? Even if maybe you weren't even thinking of getting pressed, but it's going to be so easy because the timing is right. So what are your thoughts on timing and how that relates here?
No, definitely like timing is very important. Yep. And as you've said, there is like a news cycle. So essentially, whenever there's something big happening, I can give you an example like Terra, Luna, etc.
Yep.
So, for example, if you're a Terra project at that time, you could have gotten a lot of press just by announcing, "Hey guys, we're moving to another chain because of this and this and that." Like fuck Terra, like we trusted them, etc. So you can definitely ride the wave there. In terms of generally, like I don't know, for launch posts or something, it's also important. Basically, I would say that it depends on like just there's kind of I would say macro news cycles. So I don't know, like right now people are really mm, I think a little bit maybe jaded with NFTs and GameFi a little bit, right? DeFi especially. I mean, everything is kind of dumping, of course,
Right.
um, but in any case, there was definitely like a good time to publish about an NFT project, and there was a bad time to do so.
Right.
Now, the good time is actually, I would say, like for any kind of trend, the good time to get published is like, let's say it's starting to go up, 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 and then you publish here. Like it's kind of going up, but it's still not really kind of hit that like everybody's doing spot. Then it goes like here. It's unless like you're already super big, it's impossible to get published because journalists are just going to get like frustrated and burned with, oh my god, another NFT project, another this and that.
Right. Okay.
So they're just going to raise the bars for what it means to be like a good NFT project, all that stuff. So, like for example, at the end of last year, there was literally we were publishing a lot of investment stories, and people started to just say, okay, like below 10 million, we don't even consider it because there's
Yep.
just like so many of them that they got tired.
Right.
Uh,
Makes sense.
so that's kind of the macro trend. Micro trend definitely. If there's something big happening in your ecosystem, you have max 1-2 weeks to kind of strike the iron while it's hot. So
Right.
if you can kind of pitch them an angle that is related to your company, but it's like it offers some kind of insight into what happened, or some kind of alternative to like the project that was hacked or whatever, like this kind of stuff. Just be a little bit more creative about that. You can definitely pitch with that angle, and you will probably get published. So
Hmm.
that's I think a strong. I think like in general, just like using these news cycles is a very effective PR strategy that we
Right.
probably should be doing as well. So yeah, and yeah, I think that's kind of the general tips I could give you. So
Hmm.
macro, micro, both are important. Not the only factor, but definitely like with startups. I mean, timing is important, but it's not the only thing. I think I think that the founders are like 98% of the success, but whatever.
I get you. I get you. And I think that makes a lot of sense, right? If a topic is hot, then I think it's going to be much easier to convert as far as like you reaching out to journalists and trying to get them to say yes versus just like if
Yeah,
I were to write about my 10K PFP NFT project today, like
yeah,
crickets, right? Not a lot of replies on that front. So I think
yeah, definitely.
that would be very useful for people. On a practical sense, do you know of any useful tools as far as like identifying trends sort of on the come up, or is it just a matter of like checking the news daily and kind of forming your own
Yeah.
opinions on that?
Um, I mean, I don't think no, I don't think there's any tools really. I think what I used both as a journalist and as a PR person, let's say, is Twitter. Because actually a lot of the
Just
news that
keeping
I
your
got.
finger on the pulse.
Yeah, exactly. Like one important tip for Twitter is put the feed on like new tweets first,
Right.
because it makes it more effective, and just like follow the right people. I mean, there's gonna be it takes a little bit of, I think, of time to kind of set up your follower
Right.
Rolodex, let's say, on Twitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, just kind of keep at it, like go in it every day, like follow somebody who says something interesting, and eventually your feed is going to be kind of specialized into what you're working on, and that helps you
Yeah.
see every little thing that's happening. For us, it's every hack, every regulatory news, a lot
Right.
of stuff like that. So, and
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And then I also get the feeling that it's sort of a relationship building endeavor in a sense. Like you might get lucky and you had the right topic at the right time and you get featured, but is there something to be said for sort of like attempting to start a relationship with a journalist before you actually have anything to share, so that maybe 6 months down the road you do have something and like you can just make it
yeah,
happen in a day? Like what are your thoughts on that, and if so, how would somebody approach that?
yeah. I mean, I think the personal approach is definitely a winner here. Like especially if you're a PR agency employee or
Right.
just like an agent. um, Building personal relationships with journalists, like just chat about something, find common interests, just be a human, like not just a
Mm-hmm.
PR pitching robot.
Right.
It can have a lot of I think it just like it creates a lot of goodwill between you and your journalist friend, let's say, and you can just tell
Yeah.
them, like it's okay if I send you pitches from time to time, I'm not only gonna send you good stuff, etc.
Right.
And again, that guarantees that this person will at least evaluate your pitches, so that's really good. And yeah, like in general, doing it too much before, I think, I mean, it's difficult to maintain a friendship for 6 months, so, or at least
Right.
some kind of level of, friendly acquaintance. So I would just do it maybe like 1 month, 2 months before
Hmm.
talk. Maybe if you really hit it off and you become like BFFs or something. So
Yeah.
that can also work. But yeah, I think some of the most successful, I'd say, like people who pitched to me were definitely the ones who like just took time to get to know me, to read my stuff as well. So I think it's always good.
Yeah. That makes sense. Can you remember any specific examples as far as like, here's how they approached me? Like what was their first like if they're not trying to pitch you anything, then what's the value you bring? Do they send you other articles that you might be interested in, or like how did the conversation start? And yeah, just I guess that's sort of the main thing. So like how did those relationships start when they weren't really looking for anything, and then whatever, a month later they had something and you were like, oh yeah, I'm happy to write about this. Do you remember any examples that would be useful to share?
Uh, well, yeah, I mean, there was one person with whom I ended up. Yeah, it was like kind of a fateful meeting in a sense. Um, and basically, they just started by, I think like they just like said, "Oh, hey, this article is really nice. It's really like detailed, etc." And it was like related to it was related to Polkadot, I think. And just kind of got start chatting like about, I don't know, where to live, nice places. Oh, I've been here, you've
Right.
been there, etc. There was, I think, I mean, I don't remember there being like any kind of expectation of like quid pro quo, let's say at
Right.
first. Maybe at the end, that person did say something like, "Oh, hey, I may have some stories from like from some startups. I can send them to you if you want." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, why not?" But I mean, it doesn't have to be about the value. Just like if you hit it off, if you have like some friendly conversation, it's gonna
Hmm.
stick. It's gonna stick in them in their minds. So yeah,
Yeah. No, that makes sense. So like a genuine compliment, if you do appreciate their work, that's one way to sort of break the ice, and
yeah,
then just chit chat, like, making
yeah,
friends, whatever, and then whatever
yeah,
happens,
yeah,
happens.
yeah. Just
Yeah,
be
that makes
human, I
sense.
guess.
Do you think there's something, is there value in sort of like interacting with them on Twitter and stuff? So like maybe they kind of like know of you, and then when you DM them, it's sort of like not out of the blue, or is there value in that?
Uh, yeah, it can definitely help. I think, like in that case, it just kind of worked out without any of that. And but definitely, if you have some interactions on Twitter to kind of like prep the ground, let's say.
Yes.
Again, nothing too like it has to be genuine. I mean, just like maybe you reply to some kind of you put a thoughtful comment or something. You just like
Right.
maybe you agree on some topic. It's definitely useful prep work. Like it's maybe not necessary per se. Depends on maybe like also the caliber of journalists, like the super fancy ones with 60K followers. It's difficult to catch their attention, but most journalists are not like that.
Right. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, what about PR agency versus sort of like doing it yourself? I mean, what are your thoughts here? When should somebody look to hire a PR agency, and when should they just try to like do it themselves? And because I would imagine the main benefit really of PR agencies is like, well, obviously they have maybe a bunch of people working on it, but there's probably some connections there. I would imagine it
Yeah.
would be hard to run a PR agency and not have any connections, after
Yeah.
you've been doing it for a while. So,
Yeah.
yeah, just love your thoughts on sort of like the value in hiring a PR agency, and maybe when it doesn't make sense. I would imagine that really just comes down to like how much money you have. But any thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah, I mean, so PR agencies are generally quite expensive for like early stage. Let's say if you don't have like millions to spend. I mean, it's not millions, but it's still like a significant monthly cost. That's like one or two employees at least. So
Right.
it definitely has to be kind of pondered. I would say that if you are willing to do this kind of run like how do you say, like scrappy work to find that one or two journalists who will write about you, and you are willing to put the time to do all this like relationship building, you can definitely kind of achieve, I think, 80% of what a PR agency does with
Right.
none of the cost. As you scale up, there's definitely kind of a choice between having a PR person on staff and a PR agency. I would say, obviously, it depends on the PR person. So if you get somebody who worked with a PR agency who probably has kind of all the contact lists anyway, definitely go for the person because they will be focused entirely on you and they will be cheaper than a PR agency.
Yeah.
But if you cannot find that person, and like, I think the contacts and the knowledge as well of a PR agency are definitely valuable. So I think it's not it's not something that I would really pay for first thing, let's say.
Right.
But if you have I don't know, if you're spending 60K a month on various contractors and stuff, you can definitely add a PR agency and have good results there. So
okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I would just close it with saying that if you're small but have a lot of money, definitely go for the PR agency. If you're kind of have a lot high headcount and can afford to have like a full team for like a copywriter, a PR person, etc., then yeah, it's probably better to go for an in-house thing.
And I would also sort of derive from what you've said so far that it is definitely not, a thing that you would like to approach with sort of a shotgun approach where you try to sort of go for quantity. Like, hey, I'm just going to find like a list of whatever 100 writers and blast them all. It's like it's a sniper thing. Like you got to find the exact people. And because I think sometimes there's a bit of fear with that, where you go, I'm going to shoot my shot with this person. If it doesn't work out, then the dream of getting featured is dead, basically. But that's really that other approach, I would imagine, just not going to work. And there's only so many journalists. Like there's not a ton of them, especially like crypto is, still relatively small, right? So there's only X amount of outlets, X amount of writers. A sniper approach, by the sounds of it, is a much better approach than sort of like shotgunning it, right?
Yeah, I would say just don't despair if like your first approach hasn't worked. You will always have more and things to report about. Maybe you'll have a better position and you'll be more interesting from that perspective. So just keep trying. I mean, obviously, if you do miss like the launch publication, the fundraise publication, which are kind of like they are kind of high likelihood, events. I mean, it sucks, but you also have to keep in mind that PR is just one of many things that you can do. And definitely in terms of quantity, I would say there's a lot of projects that are maybe on the kind of, let's say, scammier side that are just like using paid press release or something like that. And saying like, hey, we got published on Cointelegraph, etc. And of course, the financial department of Cointelegraph knows this very well and uses it, and I think kind of abuses it with the pricing. But okay, and like that can be useful, I think, for kind of establishing some sort of like superficial trust if people like don't bother reading, oh, this is a paid release. If you're kind of on the more serious side, then this work can really pay off from the trust side because it's organic, so definitely it's like worth much more. And even just from a visibility standpoint, having one legit publication, even on Cointelegraph, which also does like paid, but on Coindesk, the block, all these like kind of big ones, which are not impossible to get actually if you're like doing something cool. Having one of them is like worth 100, I don't know, paid PRs, just because, because the PRs don't give you any SEO strength. They don't have like do follow links. They don't give you visibility because they're always in like their own kind of hidden section. So nobody's going to like legitimately.
It pays the bills, but they don't want to like put that on the front page. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and so just like an organic article is worth like many times more than just like plastering PRs over the table.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And then what about follow-up? And there's sort of two parts to this question. It's like, what if I send a pitch to somebody and I don't hear back? Should I ever follow up with them? And also a sort of second question to that is, what if I send a pitch to somebody, I don't hear back? I would assume that it's still not annoying to send, let's say, another pitch for a different story like a month later or something like that. So any sort of guidelines on like, should you follow up with people? Should you not? How many times? And if you were to send multiple stories, what sort of like the minimum, time intervals between before it's like annoying? Any thoughts on that front?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that. So one useful thing you can do is just like changing the medium of communication between like one pitch and the follow up. So if you sent an
Right.
email, like maybe follow up on Twitter, do a
Yeah.
Telegram, Um, I don't know. I can give you like a bad example of what not to do. There was like
Yeah.
this PR
That'd be great.
person who kept sending me PRs about random stuff. And I mean, she was customizing them for sure because she like went back, oh, like you're from this city. Oh, I was also like in that city for something,
Right.
something, something. And I mean, it was like I can see the effort, but I mean, the story itself, like I checked that, like it at least grabbed my attention in that sense. Um, but the story wasn't interesting. It's like it just like kind of felt like a cheap maneuver that wasn't really I wasn't really feeling there. So in general, just if you want to follow up, like do it, decently, like maybe one day after or something like that, 1 or 2 days. Be nice about it. Like it's obviously
Right.
it's normal. Like people expect that, like like it's normal to miss something, and maybe if you are gentle about it, just like kind of remind, hey, have you seen this? Like, what did you say? Without like any kind of innuendo about like, hey, you motherfucker, you should have seen this already. Like, why are you not? Or maybe
Yeah.
the worst,
Why aren't I
the
published yet?
yeah, the worst absolute thing you can do is use like one of those pixel trackers. But I don't remember the name of the program,
Oh, to see
and
if
just
they
say like,
open the email.
yeah, and like I see you open the email, like you
Uh,
motherfucker. Never, never, ever do this because it's like
yeah,
it's creepy and it's cringe and it just doesn't win you anything. Um,
that's funny.
yeah, and so yeah, basically, so follow up. Yeah, follow up is good. Be nice about it. Use different channels because maybe just they are not seeing emails that much, and
Hmm.
yeah, maybe that gets your response.
Out of 100 pitches, how many typically would like if you got 100 pitches in your day as a journalist? How many of them would you be writing about, just to get a framework of like this is what's normal?
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, back when I used to do this, I wasn't getting
Is it like
100 pitches.
five or like 50 or like 80? Like what's the hit rate?
I mean, I would say that. So in terms of like in general, my personal load was something like between 2 or 3 articles per day,
Hmm.
of which maybe 1 or 2 were kind of instant news. So it's something that just happens now, and you publish about it. And
Yep.
you like maybe write within an hour or even like breaking news within like 15 minutes.
Yep.
Uh, and usually I would just like do maybe one kind of embargo article, so from a pitch per day. So yeah, it's like
So one per day.
one per day. Yeah, maybe two sometimes if I really like the
Okay.
story. So yeah, it's not a huge hit rate. I mean, but I also wasn't getting like 100 pitches per day. I mean, that was maybe like 10, 15 during like high,
Well,
like
it's
busy
more than I
times.
expected, though. So you're saying, I mean, obviously you're not talking specifics as far as numbers because you don't have the data, but by the
Yeah,
sounds of it, like one or two per day, that means like for every writer, let's just say this was an average, for every writer, they're gonna be picking up a pitch every day pretty much. And so there's a lot of opportunity there, like literally on a daily basis for people to send out an email and get featured. And then of course doing all the things that you've already talked about, but I think
yeah.
that's optimistic. I mean, that's actually much higher than I was sort of expecting, to be honest. So I think that's
Um,
great.
yeah, I mean, I think like there's definitely maybe some kind of initial filtering that's happening, but I mean, like I tell you, like as if you're a legit project, not trying to, if you do not appear scammy, and if you're
Yeah.
legit, and if you're doing something interesting, and you have like the right contacts and the right way to approach this, you can definitely get published in something like Coindesk, even if you're like kind of a small startup. As long as
Hmm.
you do something interesting and you really like make it exciting for the journalists on the other side. Having like maybe also like for since most of the startups are going to be VC funded, it's you can also use your VC network for this. Doesn't
Right.
guarantee you though. Like I've seen DCG startups get rejected by Coindesk, so that happens also.
Really, and they own Coindesk. Well, I guess that's a good thing,
Yeah,
right? That's like journalistic
yeah,
integrity, right?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
helps, but it doesn't like guarantee you anything in the end.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, just again, the chances are actually pretty good, especially now, like bear market. There's not going to be that much stuff to write about. So anything that's new and up and coming, like fundraising, definitely also works now, just because it's like, oh wow, you're actually fundraised.
Yeah.
So all of this kind of stuff really makes it kind of, I think, fairly easy to get published if you have
Mm-hmm.
the right approach.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, one small question that I forgot to ask earlier that I would love to know the answer to. So, like, out of those, let's say you got 10 pictures a day and you publish one, let's just say on average, would you respond to the other nine, or never respond, or sometimes yes, sometimes no? It's just too much volume.
Too much work to respond to everyone. I
Yeah.
think like I would make an exception, and like if you follow up a few times, if you like it's a legit
Right.
pitch that's not obviously like a mass sent to a lot of people.
Yeah.
Maybe I could take the time to say like sorry, I don't, or but usually 90% of them just get no answer. Sorry for that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's useful to know because I think people might be discouraged to see the like lack of reply and read that as like, oh, we're completely chasing something that's not going to happen because you don't see sort of any signs of progress. It's like, but I think it's not helpful to see it that way. It's just journalists are busy. They do get pitched a lot and they just don't have the time to literally respond to everyone. It's not personal, so you shouldn't give up. Like follow up maybe once on a different medium. Obviously, have a list of other outlets and writers that you could pitch it to. Maybe you get lucky there. So I think that's useful to think of as well. What about like? Is there anything to be said for have you read this book by Ryan Holiday from back in the day called "Trust Me, I'm Lying," where he was doing the PR for like I can't
Unfortunately,
even remember.
no. Is it
Well,
Ryan
it's a great
Holiday?
book.
Like, was he like the kind of guy on Quora, like a famous sort of influencer in Quora? I remember Ryan Holiday there, but not sure.
He's a
But I
writer.
haven't.
Like he writes books primarily. That's all he does. But he was doing marketing back in the day. I think for like American Apparel or something like that. And he's a very successful guy. Like he had like the CMO role as like a 20-something-year-old, and he really kind of like he understands marketing really well, and he was utilizing that for the company that I worked for. But one of the sort of strategies that he wrote about in Trust Me, I'm Lying was this kind of concept of sort of starting small and then trying to use that momentum to get more press. So instead of going straight to Coindesk, he would go to some smaller, maybe like independent thing, get them to featured because he's more likely to get a yes there, and then maybe take that and send that to Coindesk to kind of like build on the momentum. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that works, or is it a bad idea? Or
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts. It's in general, I would say it doesn't really change anything.
okay,
So if you get like if your startup gets published on, so actually it can be negative first of all. So if you quote examples where you paid for a post and you say like, oh, we got published on this website, and you
it's
use that to kind
sponsored.
of to and you use that as some kind of like confirmation or just cloud
Yeah,
thingy, just like an immediate no, like red flag, just no.
yeah.
Um, if you are published organically on something, like it depends. Like if it's a legit but small publication, so I'm thinking like Crypto Briefing, I'm thinking Crypto Slate. There's a few of these like tier twos that are
Yeah.
okay-ish,
Yeah.
but I just like haven't really gotten numbers. And it can help, I think. Like you can definitely kind of. I wouldn't say like I wouldn't play. How do you say it? Like I wouldn't use it to say like, "Hey, these guys published about us. Then you should definitely publish about us on your
Right.
side." just say like, hey, if you want to, like, we are this and this. If you want to read about this, check out this article on Crypto Briefing, and that kind of reinforces that.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's clever.
And so yeah, I mean, it can, but in general, like, it doesn't, like, it can not hurt. I would say it doesn't help really that much. I mean, it's like other publication, like there's a rivalry involved. So actually, if you get, I don't know, a story published on CoinDesk, and maybe you go like to another outlet a little bit later or something, and maybe you're trying to publish it the same day, and they already see it's on CoinDesk, they are like, fuck you, like, so there's
okay.
So I guess it's basically that. I mean,
yeah, that's really interesting, and this is the kind of stuff that, like, I would never know, and somebody who's never worked in this wouldn't really get that, like, that there is a bit of rivalry, and like doing something like that could actually have a negative impact. So it sounds like in some cases maybe it works, especially if there's a little bit of finesse in how you do it. It's like, if you want to learn more, you can check this out, and so on and so forth. But there can be sort of a backlash in terms of like, oh, this is our main competitors. We don't want to be taking the same news that they've written about and write it on us, because it makes us sort of lose positioning and all that. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah, like if it's the same news, never going to happen if it's already out there.
Right.
If it's some kind of follow-up, maybe, I mean, if you're like super hot and interesting, of course you can get something, but at that point you can also get it everywhere. So
yeah, that I can see that working, especially if there is that competition where it's like, all right, you won this one, you got the first article, but we got the follow-up. So, maybe that's useful in that respect. But that's very valuable. So I think really sort of my last question on this whole stuff. So if you were in my position here, and I'm basically trying to help people understand this space and how to approach it, are there any questions that I should have asked you that I haven't?
Well, on PR side, it's like, I would say, no, you've been pretty thorough. I mean, maybe like tips on how to write PR or something, but I mean, I would say that actually, yeah, like, I guess one important part of pitching well is just like being short in like the pitch, the PR. So like, I personally didn't suffer from this, but I know that other people did, and like other people are like kind of excluding it based on this factor. So if the PR is more than, let's say, 3 to 4 to 500, 500 words max.
Yep.
If it's more than that, they're just not going to read it usually. So
just too much.
You have to be concise. You have to be like very, like, get the cool things about your project or your news in the first few paragraphs, so that people know why should I continue reading. Don't use language that is like way too complex.
Right.
Just, I mean, I know that a lot of kind of PR writers tend to make them like very fancy and like very like utilized and this thing.
There's a whole list. I legitimately have a list just for fun, like in Notion, with like crypto buzzwords, and it's like a lot of those thrown in there, right?
Yeah, I mean, actually, also good point. Don't use too many buzzwords when you're like, just make it, you can sell yourself, but don't like make it too obvious, too unbelievable.
Yeah.
And use simple language. So utilize, like, if you want to say use, not say utilize. There's a lot of these examples that I see in PRs that are like intentionally made to be complex, and
right.
I mean, yeah, it's gonna get rewritten anyway, but why make it
easier for them?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So Trump style, you're saying. They say Trump speaks at a fourth grade level, and that's why he reaches the masses. Whereas, like, if you're too sophisticated, it kind of like goes over the head of like a large.
I mean, this is a lesson that's been drilled down like really hard into my head by the experience with Zircon, because I was kind of using, I would say, at first, the standard crypto Twitter, like simple words, but a lot of like specified terms. So like, right. I don't know, I would say like option capital efficient AMM or something like that. And if you're like, and I underestimate how many people don't understand what the hell that means.
Yeah.
And that was a mistake I really did in the first few days. But even with investors, even with people on crypto Twitter, even and especially so with like what most of your community is going to be like, which is, I don't know, like just regular people, like they're maybe bought a few projects for fun, but they're not going to be like super duper involved into it. So simple words is a mistake I see in a lot of projects, and I mean, I also understand that it's not easy to explain what you do in simple words, but it's something that you have to work a lot towards because it pays off.
Yeah, I've seen this firsthand many times. Not necessarily sort of in the PR space or like pitch wise, but just the way that people write about what they do. In fact, I did an interview not long ago, and I was talking about this. How like there's so many Web3 projects where you go to the website and you can't figure out what they do because like the language is just ultra sophisticated, and it's like attempting. It's not even maybe an attempt to be smart. It's just a lot of these people that do this writing are, you know, high level software engineers, and this is literally like how they function, you know. So I don't think it's necessarily like they're going out of their way to sound smart, but I do agree with like making, you know, you're not going to lose out by making it easier to understand what it is that you're trying to communicate, but you are going to lose out by making it too difficult and too complex. So I think that's a great tip. And quick follow up on that. So like when it comes to sending, so, you know, you say PR, which means like press release, right? So when I send a pitch, should I be putting something on my, you know, the blog of the project and sending that to you? Or should I like put the words in the email, or like doesn't matter, or like what's like the sequence of events there, or like do I create the press release on my blog after you've published? Like how does that work?
Yeah, so I mean, for pitching, either a blog or a press release Google Doc is fine. PDFs and like Microsoft Word docs are you can use them, but they're not ideal, I would say. Yeah, I just go for a doc. So yeah, you can also send the link to, let's say, a draft of your post on Medium or whatever, and as long as it has all of the information, it's fine.
Yeah.
Generally, the press release, you want to do it just because you can afford to give some like background information and stuff. Especially like the about section. I mean, it is, if you make it useful, it's going to get like published because maybe somebody doesn't even know what your project is, and that actually helps them kind of ground what the hell are we talking about even. So yeah, just and in terms of publishing blog posts and you know, the news, so most of the time you're going to be setting an embargo, right? So it means that the publication cannot write about it before this time, or so they will usually just, you know, write it up before, schedule it, and then it goes out at the time.
Yeah.
And in terms of your blog post, it should go out at the same time as the embargo, because otherwise, like you can maybe like 5 minutes before, and sure, but if it's like 1 hour or 2 hours, you're kind of scamming the publication in a sense, because you're like the news is out there and.
So I just really wanted to turn it over to you for a second. I know that, you know, you got your own startup in the space. So why don't you tell us more about Zircon and what you guys do and what your main challenge is right now? And yeah,
I mean, so Zircon is a DEX. We're launched on Moon River now as Zircon Gamma. And what we do that is unique, might be interesting to journalists, is that we have developed a system that allows you to supply liquidity with one token, and most importantly, you stay in that token. So it's not getting sold against the other. So if you have Ethereum, you still have Ethereum, and you keep that exposure in kind of more complex terms. And the other benefit that we do is impermanent loss mitigation. So we just actually published a benchmark of real life results, and our token like went up by, I don't know, 5x. Usually it would suffer 27% impermanent loss. With this system, some of them actually had like slightly negative impermanent loss, so like minus 0.8 or something. Then there's like 3%, and there's one unfortunate thingy that is like 21%. But you know that was kind of shown in the UI anyway. So like the thing is that the system is like completely different from everything else. We don't make like promises like, oh, we're gonna cover everything when it pumps, like kind of like Banker did. It just like, it depends on market incentives, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. but overall, it's expected to be definitely better than what you have so far and more resilient. And yeah, I mean, I guess our biggest challenge right now is, besides like all of the technical aspect, you wouldn't believe how much like technical delays and inability to allocate resources to some kind of cool initiatives we had, how much it affected our marketing, because we couldn't we didn't have like the time to develop some minor stuff that would have helped us like do some really cool things. So don't underestimate the technical aspect, I guess, even if you're doing marketing. And beyond that, it's really difficult to get kind of legitimate organic growth from people who would be actually putting money and not just like farming for free rewards. So that's definitely an issue that we had in our kind of initial outreach. We did the classic kind of NFT-based stuff, let's say. So it's like whitelists, etc. And it worked. It gave us a good chunk of people who were going on the website, learning about it. But most of the ones who stayed were just airdrop farmers. We had somebody farm 10 whitelists, which required probably hours of work. Yeah, that's kind of the unfortunate side effect of doing these things. But otherwise, yeah, just like slowly growing, listing on various aggregators. There's not like that much that you can do to market yourself. And PR is actually, if you do it well, can be quite effective. It takes some investment as well. So.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of Dexes recently. It's a bit of a bloodbath out there. There's a lot of them and whatnot, so I'm sure you got your hands full and a big mountain to climb, but I guess that's the fun part.
That's it's going pretty well. I mean, we did reach like 800K TVO in a couple of weeks, well, almost 800K, and it's been definitely going kind of on the uptrend. It's just that it's still like a very small numbers for now, but we'll see.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere. Good stuff, man. I really want to thank you for taking the time. It's been super valuable for myself. I know that a lot of people that are gonna watch this are gonna finally get some understanding of like how this whole space works and how to approach it and whatnot. So, unless you have any final thoughts, just a massive thank you. And yeah, man, good luck with the project, and we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, thank you for hosting me. I've been meaning to do this a lot because I just see so many things done wrong in this the PR space, let's say. So it's been really fun to talk about it and kind of offer my perspective in a sense. So
fantastic.
Okay.
Well, thanks, man.
Okay. Bye.